Once upon a time, there was a girl, and she had such beautiful and long hair that everyone who saw her could not take their eyes off. The strands were so light, just golden. Therefore, they called her Goldilocks. For all her beauty, she was a very naughty little girl. Mom always allowed her to walk in the yard, but ordered her not to go into the woods behind their house. Goldilocks was very interested to know what is in that forest. And so, while Mother did not see, she somehow left the house into the forest. The girl walked for a long time in the forest. Either he finds a berry, then looks at a beautiful flower, then listens to how the birds sing. So she got lost in the forest. And suddenly she saw an unusual house in a clearing. Goldilocks approached him quietly. I walked around but did not see anyone. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. Then she knocked harder, and the door opened itself. Goldilocks entered cautiously. 3 bears lived in that house. One bear was dad big and shaggy. The other was a mother bear. It was smaller. The third was a little bear. The bears were not at home because they had gone for a walk in the woods. The girl entered the room and saw 3 bowls of porridge on the table. The first bowl, the biggest one, was the daddy bear. The second bowl, the smaller one, was the mother bear, and the third, the smallest, was the bear cub. Near each bowl lay a spoon, large, medium, and small. Goldilocks was so hungry that she first wanted to eat from a large bowl. She took the largest spoon, took the porridge, tasted it, but the porridge was too hot. Then she took a medium spoon, took the porridge, tasted it, but the porridge was too cold. Finally, she took a small spoon and tasted the porridge from the small bowl. This porridge was neither hot nor cold, just right. And Goldilocks ate all the porridge from the little bowl. After eating, the girl wanted to sit and saw 3 chairs near the stove, one large, another smaller, and the third, very small, with a little red pillow. First, she tried to climb into the largest chair, but could not. Then the girl tried to sit on the middle chair, but it was very hard and uncomfortable. Finally, she sat down on the smallest chair, and it was just right for her. Goldilocks liked the chair so much that she began to swing on it. The chair cracked, broke, and she fell to the floor. The girl got up and went to another room. There were 3 beds, large, medium, and small. First, Goldilocks climbed onto the first bed, but it was too high and hard. I lay down on the middle one, it was too spacious and soft. The girl lay down on the third, smallest bed. She was just right for her. Goldilocks felt so comfortable and cozy that she quickly fell asleep. The girl was fast asleep when the bear family returned home. The bears got very hungry and immediately went to the table. Seeing his bowl, Papa Bear got really angry. Someone was eating my porridge. He growled. The bear mother also looked into her bowl and growled less loudly. Someone was eating from my bowl too. And the bear cub, seeing his empty bowl, cried loudly. Someone didn't just eat from my bowl, he ate all my porridge. The bears smelled something was wrong, left the table, and began to look around. Daddy Bear noticed that someone moved his chair and growled in a terrible voice. Someone was sitting on my chair. The bear mother looked at her chair and complained. Someone was sitting on my chair and moved it from its place. And then, the bear looked at his broken chair and again cried loudly. Someone did not just sit on my chair, but broke it. All 3 bears went cautiously into the bedroom. Someone was lying on my bed and crumpled it. Papa Bear roared in a terrible voice. And someone was lying on my bed too and crumpled it, growled the mother bear. The teddy bear looked at his bed and cried again. Someone was lying on my bed. And then he saw the girl and squealed in a thin voice, and still sleeps in her. Dad and Mom bears came to the bed and saw that a little girl was sleeping there. Goldilocks woke up from the cry of a bear cub, and was very frightened. There were 3 bears in front of her. She instantly jumped out of the house and ran wherever her eyes looked, without looking back. The girl ran for a long time. She was very tired, and then she saw her mother, who was looking for her missing daughter in the forest. Since then, Goldilocks always listened to her mother and did nothing without her permission. She became a very obedient, kind, and good girl.
My grandfather planted a turnip, and it grew big, very big. Never seen such a turnip in the villages. And so my grandfather went to pick a turnip. Pulls, but cannot pull. The grandfather did not know what to do. And that way, but it will not pull out in any way. Then the grandfather called the grandmother to pull the turnip. An old woman came, grabbed her grandfather by the back, and they began to pull the turnip together. The grandmother is for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they just can't pull it. It's just some kind of trouble. The grandfather pondered and realized that it was time to call the granddaughter for help. And they began to call the little girl at the top of their voices, so much so that the whole village trembled. The granddaughter came running, took hold of the grandmother's skirt, and again they began to pull the turnip. The granddaughter for the grandmother for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they cannot pull. The old people were upset, because such a turnip disappears. Then the granddaughter decided to call her dog, Bug, so that at least she could help pull the turnip. Bug came running, grabbed her granddaughter by the handkerchief, and they began to pull the turnip together. A bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. They pull, but they cannot pull again. The grandfather and grandmother were even more upset, because the uneaten turnip will disappear. Suddenly the bug barked and ran away. The dog returned not alone, but with a cat. She grabbed the beetle by the tail, and began to pull the turnip all together. A cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, but not stretch. The old people were upset with their granddaughter. They will not see a turnip. Suddenly the cat ran into the barn. She was gone for a long time, and she returned not alone, but with a mouse. The grandfather and the woman, and the granddaughter and the beetle began to ask the mouse for help. She wagged her tail, squeaked twice, and then grabbed the cat's fur with her little paws. And again they pulled the turnip together. A mouse for a cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, and pulled the turnip. And so the grandfather decided to share the turnip. He took half for himself, gave a third to his grandmother, a little less to his granddaughter, a piece of the beetle, a half of a piece for a cat, and a very small crumb for a mouse. The animals were offended by their grandfather because they helped in the same way, and he divided the turnip dishonestly. A year has passed. Grandfather planted the turnip again, and it grew larger than before. For a long time such a turnip has not been seen in the villages.
Cool.
And so my grandfather went to pick a turnip. Pulls, and this and that, but will not pull. The grandfather did not know what to do. And I decided to call my grandmother for help again. They began to pull the turnip together. The grandmother is for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. They pull, but they just can't pull it. Then the grandmother called her granddaughter. The granddaughter came running, and they pulled the turnip together. The granddaughter for the grandmother for the grandfather, and the grandfather for the turnip. Pull, but not stretch. The grandfather was upset and went to ask the animals for help. He called Bug, but she only turned her face away, wagged her tail and ran away. Grandfather found a cat, and she climbed onto the roof of the barn. Then the old man went to the mouse, but she did not listen to him either. Then the grandfather realized that the animals were offended by him for not honestly sharing the turnip. After all, without a mouse, a cat or a bug, grandfather cannot see a turnip. The old man thought, collected his thoughts, and went to the animals again. He apologized to the bug, asked the cat for forgiveness and promised the best piece of turnip for the mouse. Then the animals agreed to help their grandfather.
Okay.
And they began to pull the turnip together. A mouse for a cat for a bug for a granddaughter for a grandmother for a grandfather, and a grandfather for a turnip. Pull, and pulled the turnip. Baba baked turnips. For a long time such delicious turnip has not been seen in the villages. And the grandfather divided the turnip equally, a piece for himself, grandmother and granddaughter. A bug with a cat and even a mouse were received each piece. Everyone was happy. So, they lived in peace and harmony happily ever after.